Beruchim Habayim. Welcome another session of our Tuesday night class, our halakha classes for women. We want to thank Ms. Vinas for hosting this week's shiur. Thank you very much. Be'ezat Hashem, you should have only simcha in your home. Amen. This week we're going to be doing about tevilat kelim. Dipping the utensils, the vessels that you have to dip it in a mikveh. And in that, there's so many different concepts and details regarding it. I was walking 3 days ago. I went to dip something in the mikveh, and someone told me, "Why are you dipping that?" And I say, "Well, you have to dip it." He's like, "But it's glass. Glass we don't dip." I said, "Of course you have to dip glass." And he was a learned person. So it seems like even the basics, some people forget at times. So we're going to go through the basics to the more serious questions. For example, how do you dip an espresso machine? Or if you have to dip it. Or the Ben Ish Chai brings down that you would have to dip a glass table. If you have a glass table, you eat on it. It's for the food. You would have to dip a table. We'll see how you could get around that. Among many other questions. If a person has false teeth and it's made out of metal, does she have to dip it, or does he have to dip the false teeth? If you have a boiler that you drink from, or a water cooler, and there's so many different examples of exactly what needs to be done and how to do it. Before we get involved with the halakha, there's a very interesting theme that goes on in this week's parashat Vayeshev. Parashat Vayeshev is all about Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef gets sold by his brothers. He goes into captivity. He becomes a slave to Eshet Potiphar. He goes to jail. And something amazing about this parasha, if you look at the words, each pasuk starts with a vav. Vayeshev Yaakov. The next one is a aleph. Then it goes on. V'Yisrael v'yireu v'yomer v'yomeru v'yahalom v'yomer v'yisaper v'yikaneu. Every pasuk in the parasha starts with a vav except for 8. Now, if you can't, it'll actually be 9. But the Sefer HaPardes and the Rokeach both being down 8, they probably had a different version where 2 Pesukim were 1. And they ask a question, what is going on with this parasha? Why is every letter, the first letter, every Pasuk of Vav, besides for 8? And they answer, because it's like Brit Milah. It's like circumcision. Now, that doesn't mean much to us. What does that mean? It seems very deep, very, very, very esoteric. And there is a wonderful sefer written by Rabbi Zev Weinberger, Sefer Shemen HaTov. He says, I'll explain to you why these 8 don't have a vav and what it has to do with Brit Milah. He said because 8 is spirituality. Everything in life that's physical is number 7. There's 7 notes there's 7 tunes, 7 notes in instruments. This do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Right? There's only 7. There's 7 heavens. There's 7 days of Sukkot. There's 7 layers of the earth. There's Shivat Aminim. Everything is 7. That's physical. And then when it turns into 8, then it's more than physical. It's spiritual. 8 is a different plateau entirely. And if you want to know what 8 is always on top. There's 7 days of Sukkot. Shemini Atzeret. When you're just with God, that's number 8. The Ma'ala Min HaTeva. Very good. There's 7 heavens. On top of that is 8. That's where God rests. There's 8 tunes that were sung, or 8 notes that were sung in the Beit HaMikdash by the Levi'im, not just 7. So everything that's metaphysical is number 8. And he's coming to tell you, the Sefer HaPardes and the Rokeach, that you might think from looking at this story of Yosef HaTzadik, it seems like everything was just happenstance. It was coincidence. And he went here, and he did this, and then he did that, and he did... It's coming to say, no. Everything was set by God. Everything was hashgacha piratit from the beginning of the story till the end. Everything God calculated from when he got sold, from before he got sold, why he got sold, why he got out of jail. It was all done with hashgacha piratit. Just like Brit Milah. Brit Milah is taking the physical body and making it more than physical. On the 8th day, Chanukah is 8 days. And the last day of Chanukah is Zot Chanukah. It's the most important of all the days because that is the day where you could get closest to God. So that's why the number is 8. And that's why everything in the parasha was with a vav, besides for those 8, to tell you that nothing in life is a coincidence. Now, we see even from the smallest fly. What was the story of Yosef HaTzadik? One of the parts of the story is God took a fly. He sent it to go into Paro, the king's cup. It goes in the cup. He says, "What's this fly doing over here?" You go to jail. He goes to jail. He meets Yosef. Yosef goes. He interprets his dreams. After he interprets his dreams, he says, "Remember me." He forgets about him for 22 years. He's in the jail. And then he finally remembers, and all that happened because of a fly. You see, God sends a fly. He sends a stalk of grass, a blade of grass. He sends everything where it has to be at the right time. Now, the same thing applies to Chanukah. Chanukah is a very interesting story. If you look at Chanukah, the Gemara says in Shabbat, what is the story of Chanukah? What is the miracle? And it says the miracle of Chanukah was the wars. The Jews went, they fought in the wars, and they won. If you look at Hanirot Halalu and what we all think, what was the real miracle? It was the oil. We always talk about the oil, the menorah. It lasted 8 days. Really, it should have burnt out. It's crazy. So which one was it? So if you go through the story of Chanukah, you find the same theme again. What was the story of Chanukah? You have Antiochus. Antiochus went and he wanted to make all the Jews into Hellenists, into Greeks. He goes into Modi'in, where Matatyahu Kohen Gadol, where the Kohen Gadol was, and he sends his guards to go there and slaughter on an altar a pig. And they go in, they say, who's going to slaughter it? Matatyahu said, I would never slaughter it. All of a sudden, the Hellenists got up. And the Hellenists said, we were going to do it. Who were the Hellenists? Who were the Mityavnim, the Yevanim? They were Jews that didn't want to be Jews anymore. They said, this is not for us. We don't want this anymore. They didn't understand their heritage. They didn't understand how important it is to keep what we have. Right? A lot of people in our lives, they forget who they are and what they're doing here for, and they come up with very hasty decisions on things they shouldn't be doing. And that's what the Hellenists wanted to do. They said, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to be like them, like the Greeks. And it says they went so far to do what? To take their brit milah, their circumcision. They pulled it so much to make it look like they didn't have a brit milah anymore. They wanted to be just like the Yevanim. They didn't want to have a brit milah. They would go and physically pain themselves to be like that. So the Hellenists get up and the Hellenists say, we're going to do it. Matatyahu goes nuts. He says, this is not happening. He pulls out a sword from one of the guards. He kills the Hellenist. And now the guards see, okay, this is going to get a little crazy. They pull out their swords. Matatyahu's kids get up there and they slaughter everyone. They kill all the guards, all the people, and now they're on the run. They're on the run. A couple of dozen people come join them, and they have guerrilla skirmishes. And they're going like they did in the Holocaust. They would go where the trains were, and they would steal arms, and they would kill the people until they got a little bit, until they got a little bit stronger. And Antiochus knew this was happening, so what did he do? He sent men. He sent thousands of men. And every time they had a battle, they would win. Until it came to the last battle. The last battle, Antiochus said, this is crazy, we're not doing this anymore. And he had a couple of thousand Jews to slaughter. We're going to do it easy. How are we going to do this? We're going to send horsemen. He sent thousands of guards, thousands of horses. Now, if you know what a horse is, when a horse runs, it can plow into anything. It can break down walls. And he had all these thousands of horsemen. And he's like, but I'm going to make sure that there's no way out. So he got elephants. He put on top of the elephants, he got all the snipers. Whoever would try to kill the elephant, they would shoot them down. So now you have an elephant, which you can't stop for nothing, and you have the horsemen and everything, and you have a couple of thousand Jews going up against them. Shimon, who was one of the kids, he was called the elephant killer. How did he kill them? He would take a spear, he would go under the elephant, and he would stab the elephant as many times as he can. Before the elephant's going to fall on him, he would slide out. That's what he used to do. At the end of the war, they actually found him. They were looking for him. They found him under an elephant. He died. Now, after that war, which they won, they go into the Beit HaMikdash. They find the oil, right? We know the rest of the story. There was only one. They lit it for 8 days. V'shalom al Yisrael. Everything was perfect. Beautiful. Now, if you think about it, what was the real miracle? Was it the lights or was it the war? Right? So, normally you would say, well, the lights was really, really cool. Right? It lit for 8 days. When really it shouldn't have. Like in the Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash, they had all these miracles also. And they were remembering those miracles. But what was the real miracle? Was that they won the wars. That you had a few going up against the many and they overpowered. and they won, and they defeated, and they beat them. And then what do we see from there? The same thing by Yosef, same thing by Vayeshev, the 8 Pesukim, that everything that happens from God has a reason. He was the one that wanted them to win. He was the one that went through the whole wars. That is the real miracle, but we don't see it. We think, you know what? It was just me. It was my power. It was my strength. I was smarter. I was faster. I hid better. But that's not how it is. And the same thing we see by the Jewish people. Now, if you understood who the Jewish people were and why we're so hated, right? People don't like Jews. That's just how it is. Right now, lo aleinu, there was a killing in Jersey City, and someone sent me a video of all the people talking about it and saying, you know what, those Jews deserved it. It was their fault. Even when we die, for some reason we're hated. We're not liked, and we're the ones at fault. Now, when I was in Esh HaTorah in Eretz Yisrael, I had a Rebbe, Rabbi Mati Berger, and Rabbi Berger said something amazing. He told us, he said, if you look in history, no matter what time in history, whether we were affluent, whether we were poor, whether we were strong, we were weak, we lived in the capital, we didn't live in the capital, it was always a reason why we were hated. And he said, look at the reasons. Well, they don't like us. Why? Because we control the media. Okay, so what about when we didn't control the media? Did they like us then? No, they didn't like us then either. So that's not the reason. Okay, well, maybe the reason why is because we're too poor. We don't give anything to society. So what about when we're rich? No, they still hate us. So you go through every reason why, and they'll always say that the Jews are just still psyched. That's how it is. So how are we still around? How are you around for so many years? How is it possible? Right? It's like it's interesting. Where I said this once before, but if you look at the world at large, there's 7 billion people. 2.2 billion are Christian. 1.8 billion are Muslim. And what are Jews? Jews are 14.5 million. 0.0001% of mankind. Right? That's like a TD bank account. You don't get any interest. There's nothing there. It's worthless. But for some reason, we're all over. We're everywhere. Now the question is how? So Mark Twain said this, and I'm going to read it inside because I thought it was an amazing insight. Mark Twain wrote, if the statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1/4% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, abstruse learning, and are also very out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world in all ages, and has done it with his hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians rose, filled the planets with sound and splendor, then faded to a dream stuff and passed away. The Greeks and the Romans followed and made a vast noise, and they were gone. Other people have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now and have vanished. The Jew saw them all, survived them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert but aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jews. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his mortality? And this is Mark Twain saying how, for some reason, nobody knows why, but the Jews made it throughout everything. Right? But we know the answer. The answer is because God has a plan. He guides us in every single way. Just like he had a plan in Vayeshev with Yosef HaTzadik, he had a plan in Chanukah, he had a plan in Purim also, when all those stories seemed like, well, they worked out so perfect, but that's not what it was. It was God guiding everything. The same thing why we're still around, why Jews are still here. Right? There's nothing happens for no reason. Like we said, every blade of grass, every rock, everything that we do, every moment that we do it, Hashem mechadesh et kol yom tamid. He makes us new every day. He's guiding us to make sure that we fulfill exactly what we have to do. And the older you are, that means there's more that you have to do. When you reach 50, 60, 70, 80, that means God wants you on this earth because he knows that there's more for you. When you hit 90, going on to 100, that means that you're so important that the world will not be the same without you. That's what God is saying. And how do we see this? We see this by the 6-Day War. The 6-Day War, there was a minefield. There was a minefield that the Jews found while they were walking. They had no way out, and they had to walk through this minefield. People were blowing up, and then they realized, you know what? We'll take our guns, and we'll try to shoof around to see exactly what's there, what's not there. But they knew they wouldn't be able to make it out. All of a sudden, a wind that was so strong that hasn't been in the desert in so long, or ever, blew all the sand up and everything that was there, and they saw every minefield and they were able to walk through. Now you take that story, you'd be like, well, you know what, it's a coincidence. It's exactly at the right time, but that's not what it is. God made sure that those people lived. And there were some people that came out of that and said, you know what, that's a crazy thing that happened. And someone said, you know what, this is the hands of God. There's two ways of looking at everything. There was a Russian airline that got blown up, a Ukraine, I believe, from the Russians not long ago. And there were two Jews on board. One was an Orthodox Jew, and one was a Russian Jew that wasn't affiliated from Israel. And then if you talk to the Russian Jews family, and they would say, there can't be any God. If God can do this, there is no God. And then you go to the ones that were Orthodox, they said, you know what? Hashem let us have our son for this long. He took him away for whatever reason. That's how it was supposed to be. He was here for that amount of years. He fulfilled what he had to fulfill, and God took him. And we thank him just by giving him, just by taking him. Same way. There's two ways to look at everything. But that's what hashgacha peratit is. Knowing that God is part of every nuance and aspect of your life. Even the things that we don't understand. Something just hit my mind. I remember, maybe it was 3 years ago, I was in Lakewood, and we had a groundhog infestation. We used to have these groundhogs all over, going under and making furrows inside the dirt. And we had this overground pool, and we never wanted the groundhogs to go under, because if they popped it, then we would have to go and pay for a new one. So I bought a cage. And I figured if I get a cage, I'll catch the groundhogs, and then I'll go and I'll bring them somewhere super far, and then I won't have problems with them anymore. And that's what I did. The first day, I caught a possum. All right, they're scary. I let the possum out. They don't bother you. The next day, I'm so happy because I hear something. I run outside, and I see it's a skunk. I'm like, oh, man. So what would normal people do? Let it die. So I'm like, I will wait until this one dies, because I'm not going to get sprayed. Tomato juice, not tomato juice. I don't know what's going on over here. I'm not doing it. The next day, I come back, and you won't believe what happened. Inside the cage, right, it's one of these riddles. I found 2 animals. Yeah. It had a baby in the cage. And I'm like, what in the world? And now I felt really bad. I can't let the baby die. It looked like this little mouse thing. I can't let this die. So I go and I call up animal control, and they say it's $500. And I say, forget that. Just tell me how I can get this skunk out. So he said, okay, this is what you have to do. You got to go, and you have to make it really dark. So you put a tarp over it. He said, but you can't just put a tarp over it, because it's going to spray you. And then if you see like the tail up, you know that's in the spraying position. So make sure you keep on talking to it. You got to talk to it like it's your friend and say, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. You're going to be okay. We're friends. I'm not going to hurt you. And if you saw me from the outside, I look like a total creep. I look like a crazy person. I'm going and I'm saying, it's okay. I love you. We love each other. And I'm putting this tarp over this cage, and it didn't spray me. The tail was up the whole time, and I'm saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem, please, don't do this to me now. And then he says, okay, the guy's on the phone, you're good? I'm good. See, now you have to open the cage. I said, I can't open the cage. I don't care how dark it is. It's going to run out at me. It's going to hurt me. He said, open the cage, you put a rock there, and then you run as fast as you can. So I go and I put a rock so it's able to get out. And the skunk goes, and I have a video now. I put my phone so I could video it, and the skunk goes. I pull off the tarp. I'm running as fast as I can. She puts the baby in the mouth, and she runs off. Now, I don't know the reason why that happened, but I can tell you that it's exactly hashgacha peratit. We don't have to know the reason, but for some reason, God wanted the skunk to be around. He wanted to make sure that I thought it was a groundhog. It wasn't a groundhog. It was a skunk. I made sure to get it out, and everything's good, because that's what it is. God is in every nuance of our life. Everything's calculated by Him. There is just another story of hashgacha. Even when we don't see it, we think it's bad many times, but that's why God comes and He shows us that it's not as bad as you think. in the Holocaust, there was a boy who got into an accident and he lost all the skin of his hand. So they wanted to save it. So they take skin from a different part of his body and they put it on his hand. And he had a hair on it because it grew hair because it's a different type of skin. And he used to be made fun of and he hated it. He said, I wish I could rip this off. I hate it. I don't like it. And then he's in the Holocaust. Him and his sister. His parents are dead. And he has to take care of his little sister. And he had to go out of the barracks because he had to find food to feed them. And he would always tell her, make sure you don't leave. You got to be here because I have to know where you are. And he knew he trusted her. She wouldn't leave for no reason. He gets something. He comes back. She's not there. He's like, oh, man, I know that she's a person that listens to me. She was a pretty girl. It must be that she was taken. So he goes to the head office of the biggest Nazi guard. And he says to him, give me my sister now. And the Nazi looks at him, you little punk. He said, you want your sister? I won't give you your sister until you grow hair on your palm. And he goes and he takes out his hand and he shows it to him. He says, here. He said, what is this kishuf? You're a witch, you're a sorcerer, take your sister, get out of here, you guys are disgusting. Now he thought it was bad his whole life. What a terrible thing. Look at me, I'm a mutant. I'm terrible, I'm disgusting. People make fun of me. At the end, it saved his life, it saved his sister's life. Because we don't know why God does things. But everything is for a reason. There is a person that I am very, very close with in Hollywood, Florida. His name is Mr. Shama. Mr. Shama was a traditional Jew, and then he lost his path for a little bit. And he became non-affiliated. He had nothing to do with God. He wasn't interested. He didn't like it. He didn't want it. And he worked in a doctor's office. One day, he turns on the TV in the doctor's office like he does every day for the patients. Every day for the patients. And for the waiting room. And every channel was on the same thing. The Twin Towers. It's all the same thing. It's the World Trade Center. And he sees as the planes go in, and he's watching live on television as the planes go into the Twin Towers. It crashes in, and the first tower falls. And there's a woman, an African-American woman that was sitting there with her daughter, and her mouth is wide open. And he said, are you okay? And she said, I work in that tower. I'm here because I had to take my daughter to the doctor. And he said from that day on, he was a different person. He realized that there's a reason why she ended up in my office at that time. He took his coat, he put it on, and he ran to the closest shul he can get to. He goes into the shul, and he said he was crying, and he was crying. He didn't know how long he was crying for. And he said from that day forward, he's like, God put me in that situation for a reason. This is hashgacha piratit. I'm there, and he wants me to become better. A few days later, his father that he didn't talk to in over a year, or didn't see in over a year, was in the same exact shul, and they reconnected from it. And now he has a wonderful wife, a beautiful family, religious, the kids are religious, all going in the ways of Torah, all because God felt the need to show that I am here and I am with you all the time, and everything I do is for a reason. Everything is calculated. Everything is a purpose. And I made sure she came in there because I knew that you were going to have kids that would go in the way of the Torah and grandkids. And the most amazing part of that story is, which he didn't tell me, whenever I hear a story like this, I think that this woman, African-American woman, she's going to go up to Shamayim, she's going up to heaven, and they're going to say, wow, you have all this Torah that you did, and you supported this, and you did everything. She said, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm Christian. I believe in this guy. I don't know who you are. And he's going to, you made Mr. Shama religious. You made him Jewish. You brought him back. And you're going to get reward for doing something like that. Even when we don't try to do it, we can still change someone's life and we will get reward for it. Okay, so now the Hilchot tevilat kelim. Hilchot tevilat kelim, as we said, is detailed, and there's a lot of things involved in it. I'm going to go through in this sefer. It's going to be the guide for exactly what we're doing. There is a mitzvah in the Torah to dip your kelim into the mikveh, to dip your vessels, your utensils, into a body of water that's a kosher that's kosher. We have it in the Young Israel. We have it in Sferadim. You could go to a lake. You could do it in an ocean. Many places that you can dip these kelim. Now, what's the reason why we dip kelim? It's because in the Torah it says that when the Jews got kelim Midyan, they got the kelim from this place Midyan, they had to take it out of tum'ah, out of impurity, and make it pure. And that's why, even nowadays, whenever a non-Jew makes a vessel, you have to dip it. You have to make it kosher. Ken?
You say we do the kelim for made it tahor, but we are not tahor. So how I can make think tahor? Very good question.
That's an amazing question. So there's two types of impurity of tum'ah. One impurity is impurity of the guf, and one is of the keli itself. The keli needs to be kosher, even though the guf is not kosher. But that's a very good question. Now I have over here 6 ways that you would not have to dip a vessel. And we're going to go through them each more in depth throughout this shi'ud. One, if it's made by a Jew. If a Jew makes a vessel, you don't have to dip it, it's good. If it's owned by a goy, if you don't own the whole thing, you only own half of it, or you make a partner with the goy. They tend to do this a lot by hotels or by big places where there's so many things, so they'll just go and make a partner with a non-Jew so they wouldn't have to dip it. If it's fixed by a Jew, if you have something that you break and you fix it al yedei a Jew, it turns into a Jewish vessel and you do not have to dip it. If the vessel, yes.
Just that part of it?
No, the whole thing.
You have a mixer and you fix one blade with the whole thing, like a KitchenAid.
That's a good question. So you would have to dip
You still have to dip the bowl.
Yeah, and you would have to dip the blade also because you could use the other blades.
If the actual one that was fixed.
Let's say you have a vessel and there's a hole in it, and then the Jew goes and the Jew puts a patch on it. So it was not considered a vessel because nothing could hold into it. Now even that he puts a patch, it's going to be good. I was going to say this after, but when does this apply very much? To a Keurig machine. You have an espresso machine and a Keurig machine. So people don't know that if you have one of these machines, they need to be toveled. You have to dip a Keurig machine. Now, it's not possible to dip a Keurig machine. Why?
It has an electrical cord.
No, it's not the electrical cord. You could dip a cord. That won't do anything. The problem is that inside of the Keurig machine is a metal canister that holds the water that makes it hot. It's like a water cooler would be the same exact thing. You have a water cooler. If you put the water cooler in, it's not going to actually go into this canister that makes it hot and cold. So it'll never get to it. You'll just get to all the electrical wires before and you'll break it, which I have done before. I have done that. So what do? There's 2 ways out of this. Either you go in Lakewood, they used to have this sign up, whoever wants to fix their Keurig machine, bring it to me. He would go, he would open it up, he would take out the wire that actually breaks it, he would put it back together, and now it's done by a Jew. Because now he actually fixed the keli, and it's considered a good keli. Another way out of it is what we have done, is that you sell it or you lend it to a non-Jew. You go to a non-Jew and you say, I want to give you this, you make him pay for it, and then you borrow it back, and now you can use it because it's not considered yours, it's owned by a goy, it's owned by a non-Jew. And this would apply to all these electrical devices that won't be able to make it through the water, or they actually can't make it through the water. Now, for the most part, any electrical appliance you can dip and they'll be fine, they will not break. We have done it, you leave it for 2-3 days and nothing will happen to it. But something like a Keurig or an espresso machine or a water cooler or things like that it never gets to it, so those are the ways out of it. Again, by having it fixed by a Jew, which is what they did in the Kollel by me. They had a guy come down there and fix it, or break it and fix it, or you give it to a non-Jew and he gives it back to you.
So if it was pre-owned, then it's okay?
No.
Or you have to actually
Is it pre-owned by a
sell it?
non-Jew?
Yeah, let's say you bought it from a non-Jew.
Even if it was pre-owned, even if a Jew owned it before and the Jew didn't dip it, you still have to dip it. Right?
If you sell it and then you buy it back, is that what you're saying?
No. You have him buy it from you and then he lends it back to you. Or gives it to you as a gift for a prolonged amount of time, or whatever you want to call it. Usually they don't know what's going on, so you say, listen, just let's try to work this out the easiest way possible. They don't know why you want to do it. You explain to them, I can't own it, I want you to own it. If you want a cup of coffee, I'll give you a cup of coffee. Now, there is a something good to know also, before we get into specific examples, is that anything that is not actually meant for cooking, but it's before the cooking stage. For example, if you have one of these metal things that smash schnitzel to make it flat, or you have a chicken cutter, or all these types of things, you have to dip them, but not with a blessing, because they're not actually for the food themselves, they're before the food. So you wouldn't dip it with a blessing. They say like by a knife, if you have a shochet, you have a slaughterer, a guy who slaughters animals, and he goes and he chefs animals, and now he wants to take this knife, what should he do with it? This knife should be dipped first without a beracha, because since you can't do anything with the meat, you have to wait till it's cooked and it's used. So that's another item that you would have to dip without a blessing.
So is that what you do with your silverware? You dip it without a...
No, silverware, you're eating it with the food itself.
It's cooked.
Yeah, but you're not cooking with it.
No, so you don't have to cook with it. Anything that's a kelim seudah, anything that you eat with, or anything that we're going to go through it, but anything that you bake or cook with. So if you have a fryer or a pan or a pot or forks, spoons, knives, all those have to be dipped into them with the beracha.
So like a garlic press or a peeler is considered the same as the thing that you bang the schnitzel with?
Technically, it would be, yeah.
No, because the peeler.
But I don't know if anyone eats garlic straight. If you would really eat garlic straight, then maybe that would be considered something you do with a beracha.
Yeah, but a peeler for sure.
You eat it
Cucumber.
raw.
Oh, a peeler.
You like press garlic into.
So regarding a peeler, they don't do with a beracha.
If you're peeling
They say you-
chocolate to make chocolate shavings.
Yeah, so if you do that, and that's what it's there for, then you would have to dip it with a beracha.
Well, that's
Exactly.
When you mix everything, like you have items like the racks for your oven and things like that, and you put it with the meat tenderizer. You'd say the bracha for the metal bowl. If you put it all inside of a tray and then dip it.
So you have in mind for everything else.
Yeah.
You do one and you have in mind. They say you shouldn't actually put everything first in the bowl and then put it in, because then it won't go through the whole item. It won't get to everything. So you should put the bowl in and then put each one in at a
But
time.
there's baskets
Oh,
where
the
the water
baskets are
gets
good.
all the way through, and you just.
Yeah, then you put them all at once and you make a
That's what I
beracha and all. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Now there's a very important thing to know. It's called rov tashmisho. If there's something that you don't really use often, but you would, I'll give you an example. I'm in Lakewood, and my kid is in a day camp. I come in there, and the woman was giving out ices, and she was cutting it with a knife. And I said, you can really cut yourself like that. Why are you doing that? She said, well, I never dipped my scissor. I was never tovel my scissor. So I said, you don't have to. You can use it for the ices, because since most of the usage is for paper, you're allowed to use something like that for ices, since it's not used most of the time. It's only some of the time. When would this happen very often? They say by a microwave plate. You have a microwave glass plate inside. I don't know anyone who really puts food straight on it, like straight up food. You usually put it in a bowl or something. So in that case, they say you would not have to dip that. Or even grates. If you have grates in an oven, you would never put something on it, then or most of the time, then that's something you would not have to dip as well, at all, since it's an of tashmisho. Yes.
So let's say if you're already dipping things that have a blessing in the basket, and you put in like your peeler or something that you're saying doesn't have to be
Okay.
with a blessing, is that okay to mix them?
Yeah, sure. You can have
If
a
you're
blessing
already
and have in
saying
mind
that-
for everything else. Yeah. That for sure should be done. That's the best thing to do. They used to have a guy in yeshiva that used to have a locker full of spoons, metal spoons. And anyone who had to dip something, he didn't know, do I have to dip it? Do I not have to dip it with a beracha, without a beracha? He would go to his locker, take a spoon, so he knows that I can make a beracha and then do whatever he has to do. Because we're going to see there's so many items that we don't know if they need to be dipped. If you have a Teflon plate, there's something made out of Corel, something that's, we're going to talk about them.
Just to make sure I understood, let's say that there's a pot that was owned by a non-Jew and hasn't been used in over 3 years. Can a Jew use it by dipping it or not?
No, he would not have. You would not be able to. You would first have to do either libun or hagala. You first have to burn it out because it was made with non-kosher. So if it's a pot, then you have to put it into boiling water for a different class when we get to Bezat Hashem hechsher kelim. How do you kasher kelim? But after you do that, then you have to dip it. Yes. then it would have to be dipped. Without that,
Right.
you're not getting that mitzvah. Now, this applies to metal, to glass, to anything that you can recreate. Anything that can be recreated, that's when you would make a beracha, and that's when you would dip the item. Now the rabbis actually bring down, parenthetically, we're going to talk about it for a second. Some rabbis say they actually dip plastic, because since plastic is something that you can recreate, you can melt it down and make it again. We don't go with it; it's not the custom. We just do metal. Now, what is the metal and glass? What is the din? What's the halacha with pottery or with ceramic or with china? So now that gets into a whole issue. That does not have to be dipped. You have one of these mugs that's made out of china, you do not have to dip it. Especially now with a beracha, that would be terrible, because you're breaking a beracha for no reason. But nowadays, on every ceramic item, you'll find there will be a glaze. There'll be a certain shiny glass glaze on it, and there are some rabbis that say that you should dip it without a blessing. Since there's a glaze on it and it's made out of glass, now it turns into more of a glass type of vessel, and it should be dipped. So that's what I do. I dip it without a beracha. People who don't dip it at all, that's fine too. Me personally, I dip it without a beracha, all these different items. The same thing like Teflon. Teflon is a type of plastic that's on top of a metal pan. It makes it very smooth. Teflon, I dip Teflon without a beracha. Same thing with enamel. I don't know the other items that they have on the market. There is a interesting halacha. When you have a Shabbat hot plate, you have a hot plate that we all have, the Shabbat hot plate, and we make our food hot on it. So does that have to be dipped, or does it not have to be
Usually
dipped?
made by a Jew.
That's true.
Oh, it's always Jewish companies?
Yeah.
Usually.
Really?
Yeah.
The Israeli company.
Okay, so if
What
it's
is
Not all of them.
plata.
אבל בכל מקרה זה עניין כסף.
לא.
לא.
לא, אני אומרת בכלל, אם
The one I have.
זה כאילו נראה לי יותר קרוב איך אומרים? מיקרוגל. Because it's saying
Microwave?
microgel. Yes, it's saying microgel.
Exactly, same thing. And they say even if it was made by a non-Jew, b'diuk, it would be fine because nobody puts food straight on top of the plata. They put it on in a tin or in a pot or something like that. So that would be okay also, and you would not have to dip it. Now, what happens if you drink strictly? You always drink out of your sink. I saw an interesting halacha that says that maybe you would have to dip your boiler before you put it in. Because since you always drink out of it, it holds all the water. Like in Israel, they do it very often. Many people don't buy bottled water, especially Israelis, and they'll drink straight from the sink itself. Bring down that in that case also, since most of the water that you use is going to be for other items like washing and things like that, and also there's a different permissibility, a heted, and it's attached. It's mechubad. Since it's attached, we look at it like a different item, which we're going to see soon comes into play very much. Because a lot of times when there are things that you can't dip or things that for some reason are too big to dip, since it's attached to the wall, we look at it as if it is connected to the wall and it's mechubad. And once it's connected, you don't have to dip it. We only use that as a tziruf. We use it as a branch, as an extra. Right? You understand what that means? Since you can't use this item without plugging it into the wall, it's considered as if it's plugged into the wall and now it's attached to the wall. You don't look at it like a vessel that you can bring back and forth anymore. And that would be a heter in some circumstances.
Like a rice cooker?
Like a rice cooker, like a Keurig machine. The reason why we could do the Keurig machine, you could give it to the goy, because you also have a plus one, and that is that it's attached to the wall. And some rabbis say that's okay since it's attached to the wall. And it's not considered a vessel without being attached, so you can't move
That was the
it.
case.
Like a fridge, like an oven,
Yeah, but that's what I was gonna say. In that case, then you don't have
A
to
small appliance
to
also applies?
dip anything, because the stove you have to plug it in. Everything else you have to plug it in.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you're going to get the energy, to cook.
Exactly, right. But that's only used if you have something else with it. As if it's too big, and it's not something that you bring to the table, it's not considered a vessel that you bring to the table. So you have that with the plug-in, they go for it. They say that's okay. For example, a water cooler. You have a water cooler that nobody brings the water cooler to the table, you bring a cup of water. So since it's never comes to the table, it's not considered a vessel, and it's attached to the wall, they say that's something you would not have to dip. Make sense?
Like, you know how some people have a pot filler in their kitchen next to their stove? If they were newly installing that, would they toivel that whole like hose contraption of?
It's an interesting question. Since it's mechubad, since it's stationary and it's stuck in the wall, we say it's going to be okay. Now, there is an interesting halacha regarding chad pa'amiz. You have an item that you do not use more than once. You have a Snapple bottle. So you never saw a guy take a Snapple bottle, empty it out, dip it, then put the Snapple back in. Right? That doesn't happen. What's the reason why? It's because it's made to throw out. Since it's made to throw it out, it's going to be okay. And it goes even more so to say that, and some people argue, but Rabbi Ben Sion or Moshe Feinstein both bring this down. They say, what if you're one of those people, like it's always by the grandmas. You have the grandmas who take those coffee, this Taster's Choice, and they use it for sugar, and then pens, and then everything they could think of, right? On Pesach, they always have those random Maxwell House containers, those glasses that they use for different things. So according to that, you should have to take that item before you put sugar in it or whatever you want to do with it, and then you should have to dip it, right? You have a tin. You have a tin that you want to reuse again. You put it into the oven, you make chicken, you're like, you know what, I'm going to save this tomorrow for potatoes. Why would you not have to dip this again? For the first time. Because it's made out of metal. It should be something you have to be tovel. So Rav Moshe Feinstein and Cham Ben Zion both bring down that since now that you made it into a keli, since really it wasn't supposed to be a vessel, you were supposed to throw it out. You made it into a vessel, it's as if it's made by a Jew. You understand that chidush?
That's cool.
So right now, this Snapple bottle and this tin is made by a Jew. And that's what I go with. That's what my Rebbe goes with. That's what Rav Moshe Feinstein and Cham Ben Zion both go with. That it's not something that you have to dip after. Now,
Don't confuse this with one-time use. Like, you can use it one time.
yeah, that's true. She's bringing up a very good point. There is a myth. I only heard it in the Syrian community, but I'm sure it's everywhere. And it's called one-time use. You're allowed to use something before you dip it the first time. So that's made up. I don't know where it's from. Maybe they learned it from the whole chad pa'ami thing, that since you don't have to dip it after you use it. But even before the first time you use something, you have to dip it. Thank you. Just an interesting question that they say. What happens? The minhag is not to do this, but the sefer that I'm holding, the rabbi brings down that in some circumstances you would have to. If you have a bottle of wine, and now you take out the cork, and then you have those metal pieces, those metal corks that you put in after to keep it there. So now it's made out of metal, and it's going to be touching the wine. So he brings down, if you tend to keep the bottle of wine on a slant, on the side where it's touching the metal, you should dip it without a beracha. I don't know. No, most people don't keep it like that. Even if you do, it's not rov tashmisho. It's not the usage that it's supposed to be made for. So that would be fine. But he does bring down that it would be an issue in that case. Now, if somebody has false teeth, made out of metal, made out of glass, I don't know, whatever it is, and false teeth, and it's the a keli that's legit used for food. That's the only thing you use it. You use it to bite down on it. Maybe that's something that you would have to go and you would have to dip, but the rabbis say that's not something you have to dip because it's considered an item that's for eating as opposed to an item that's a kelesut, that's a vessel for the meal. Now, what happens by a challah board? You have a challah board where we put the challah on, and everyone goes and they cut the challah on it. Is that something that you have to dip or not? So, usually, it's a Jewish one that says Shabbat on it. What?
Yes, that's what I
It's on top is zechuchit. It's always made on glass on top. Yeah, sometimes it's only wood. Usually people think that since it's from Israel, so it's something that's Israeli made. When I looked into it a little while ago, it seemed like the glass they ship, like everyone else ships it from China. So this glass is something they would have to dip. So you would have to actually take off the screws, dip the glass in, and then put it back on, or dip it all together. Hopefully it won't corrode the wood. But that's something that people don't think of when they have this challah board. Another item is the challah container. You have the container, a bread box. Sometimes it's made out of glass or made out of things like that. So if you take the bread box, the glass, and you put it on top of the bread and it doesn't touch the bread, that's something you would not have to dip because it never touches the bread. But if it's straight on top, then it would be a problem. Yes.
What about a salt shaker?
Salt shaker, good question. You would have to dip that because that touches the salt for sure.
I know, I heard something different. There was an argument on Shabbos by my friends, and they said you don't.
Why wouldn't you have to?
I don't remember what, like, maybe because it's not,
Unless the inside is really rubber. Sometimes they have
no,
it's
it was glass.
yeah. Then you have to dip it.
She like 20.
That's always on the table. Yes.
What did you say, like the straight up wood, like if you have a
Like
wooden
salad.
bowl for salad or wood, like mine?
Right. So I'm sorry. So I should have explained it better. Wood can never be recreated. You never have to dip it.
Right, okay.
Unless there's a covering,
A glaze.
like a glaze.
No.
Do they have glaze on wood? They put
No.
glaze on
No,
wood.
this is just wood.
Just wood, you would not have to.
Yeah.
The issue would be if you have wood and glass together or different parts. You have the top glass and this.
Right.
You would actually have to dip the whole thing together. You can't just dip half of it, and then it can mess it up in that way. Now you have the case of a person who you're giving a gift to, and the person is not religious. They're not going to dip it. Are you allowed to give a gift of glass or metal to a person who's not going to dip it?
No. מכשיל אותו.
So Lifnei Yived, you would say that it would be a problem. So the Menchat Shlomo brings down, and I believe this is what the rabbis hold, that since they don't actually have to use it, they can re-gift it, they can use it to sell, they can do whatever they want with it. They don't. You're allowed to give it to them, and the rabbis say that you can't look at it as if it's like a piece of chazir. It's not chazir. It's not pig. It's an item that has to be dipped, so it's not nevela. Since it's not nevela itself, it would be something that you would be able to give over.
Excuse me, what's nevela?
Nevela means something not kosher. Since it's not an item like a piece of meat, like a piece of pig.
Or you can just dip it for them, right?
Okay, so now what if you want to dip it for them? So dipping it for them could be an issue. This comes up mostly by mishloach manot. You want to go... I'm sorry?
Remake the bracha on it?
Would they? No, they would never.
Oh,
No, they would never. They can't. You have to tell them that I made a bracha or I dipped it for you. You have mishloach manot, and then you go and you give all these different items to the people in little glass jars. So what do? Can you dip it for them? Can you not dip it for them? So since you don't know if they're actually going to use it for food, if you're going to go and dip it for them and make a beracha, it's going to be a major issue. So if you're making 100, I guess you could keep a couple for yourself and then you could dip the rest. But it could be time consuming. So they say, what's the best thing to do? The Bavadia brings in, actually, he says that you're allowed to dip it for them, but they say the best thing to do is to make someone else zocheh for them. Make someone else pick up the item and say, I am taking this item and I am going to give it to Mrs. RG. And since now he was zocheh in it for you, now I can dip it for you. It's like when you have a mitzvah, you find something on the floor and you pick it up, you say, I'm picking this up for this so-and-so. They get the item right when you pick it up. The same thing over here. You're picking it up for this person and they get the item right when it goes in, right when it goes into the water, and it's considered yours right away. What happens if you are by a person that did not dip their kelim? Are you allowed to eat there?
No.
That was fast. So, if you're by a person that did not dip their kelim, everyone has to know the halacha that the food is always good. It's the keli that's an issue. The food will be good, but really, you have the spoons, you have the forks, you have all these items that you're going to be holding and be using, and that's going to be a problem. So the rabbis bring down, what should you do? You should eat with your hands, or you should take plastic forks. And what should you eat? You should eat items like meat or things that are dry, because when things are dry, they don't. Ramesh Feinstein brings down, you don't actually need the plate. It's just their stam. You have a plate there. Really, I could put the sushi on the table. For like even if it's not finger food, even if it's a piece of steak. But since I can take the steak and it's dry and I can put it on the table, so the plate isn't really doing much. But the problem would be if you have a bowl of soup. If you have a bowl of soup, you can't put the soup anywhere. So they say try to refrain from eating different items that you won't be able to eat without the plate or without the bowl.
But if they're cooking items, in these utensils, like baking pans that are metal that they didn't dip, why would you then eat it even with your hands? Because the item itself was not dipped in the mix.
Right, so we just said that the food itself will be good.
It's still considered good.
Yes, the food is good. If somebody didn't dip it and you still eat from it, that would be fine.
So me as a guest,
Yeah.
am I going to go into somebody's house and start wondering, I wonder if, bad enough that I'm questioning their kashrut. So now I'm gonna start wondering, I wonder if they dip their pots and pans.
So
Nobody's going to open
So
them
the
up
truth is,
and
most
eat
of the
it.
time, and I find this by the Syrian community very much, they're very into the fact that they say that they're dipped. They're very into, they hold of themselves like, we dipped our stuff. So you'll find that many people, even if they don't keep other things, they do dip their kelim. But if you can feel it out, if you know it's a person that really doesn't know much, it's not their fault, they just
I'm
don't
not
know.
gonna go there, period.
Yeah, well, you want to eat salad that you bring, whatever it is, on their plates. So then you kind of know if it's an issue or not, and then you say, I'm OCD and I need a plastic fork. I don't know, whatever you want to make up at that time. An interesting halacha is that when a person converts, they have to dip all their things because it was all owned by a non-Jew, and now they're a Jew and they have to dip it over. Even if they dipped it before for whatever reason, because they wanted to get that feeling. Now, regarding chatzitza, everyone knows that if there's something attached to a pot or to a pan or to a glass, and there's a chatzitza, a sticker, you have to take off that sticker. You can't keep it on because it's not letting the water go through. Now, this applies to chatzitzot, items that you care about, that you don't want to be there. If there's an item on the bottom of a toaster oven, which you really don't care, you're never going to see it, if you dip it and you forget to take it off, that's fine. Of course, you should try to take it off in the beginning. It doesn't hurt. The Ramah brings it in, you should do it. But if not, then it's fine, and you don't have to re-dip it. But if it's on the top, and you're like, oh, shoots, I forgot, there's a sticker on top, you would have to take it off, or a tag, or any item like that. Now, this only applies when you care about it. What if it's Lalik, or it says Armani, or I don't know, Lalik is fancy. And you want everyone to know that this item is Lalik, it's very expensive. You can dip that with the sticker because you want that sticker to be on. So you don't have to take off that sticker. Whatever that sticker says, whatever chashuv sticker it is, you wouldn't have to take it off. Now, regarding dipping the cord with the item itself, so the halacha is what I hold, and Rabbi Moshe Feinstein and my Rebbe as well, that you don't have to dip with the cord, but if it can't hurt, then just put in the cord as well, because some people say that would be the best thing. That would be the best thing to do.
צריך להטביל כלים חד פעמים שהם לא חד פעמים, כאילו מפלסטיק?
You don't have to dip plastic at all.
But,
No.
okay.
The minhag is not to dip it at all.
But even ones that you reuse? No, no?
Even the ones that you use, correct. Yeah.
What about when the mikveh is not looking very clean? I've been to the mikveh and I've seen it full of paper, like shredded labels. Like someone didn't remove their labels before dipping, and I've just waited until it was cleaned. That's happened a couple times when I've gone to the mikveh.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's okay?
Yeah,
Even though it's like that?
yeah,
Just
that's not a
wash your
problem.
stuff in.
With a bit of,
I would wash my stuff anyways, but it's just like really funky.
the
You
beracha,
could dip it technically in a lake, there's nauseous.
Yeah, true.
the beracha that you make, if it's more than one vessel, you make al tevilat kelim. If it's one vessel, you make al tevilat keli. The best thing to do is to make it al keli because it's only one vessel. A lot of people don't want to hold it so tight because a lot of people want to let go of it a little bit and then grab it, and then you fall in and things fall in, and then you have a lot of issues. So if you're scared of that, they bring down that you should just put your hand in the water first, make your hand wet, and then you could hold it, and then you'll be fine.
I have
Because
a
the
lump
water
skin
attaches
issue.
to it.
Always my mom said, give me a lot of stuff, and she said, go to the mikveh. And I have like 5 things, and I put it. Every time that I put, I need to do bracha or bracha to everything.
One time for everything.
Ah.
Yeah, you make more than that, that's no good. You make one beracha and you have everything else in one. The
What
same,
if you're traveling and
yeah.
just for the sake of keeping kosher, you buy one of those one thing like
A George Foreman, like a grill?
that's something, you buy your own pot and pan, whatever, one of each, which is what I'm planning on doing. But there's no mikveh anywhere within 5,000 miles. So how do I
How do you
Dip in a lake.
What, a
How do
bucket
I-
of
Oh
rainwater?
yeah, go to a lake. Go to a lake.
Ocean.
Yeah, as long as it's not man-made, it's probably not man-made. Go to a lake, go to the ocean, and dip it. Or if you really can't do something like that, put an item on top that will make a separation between the metal. Like put a couple of pieces of, put parchment paper or something else. They don't like it because you're still using the thing, but if you put enough of it and there's no way out, you can't dip it or anything like that, put a couple pieces of tin foil so that it's going on the tin foil as opposed to on the metal itself.
I have also a question.
Yeah.
You need to dip potran shimurim.
Can opener.
Good question. A can opener never touches the food. You do not have to dip it. No. Can openers, we do not dip.
These like lakes around here, like by the communities.
So that,
man-made?
those would be issues. Those are man-made.
Like rain and.
But it had to start with rain. If it started man-made, then it's going to be an issue. So people don't do it. But if you empty your pool and then you put in rain, you have 150 gallons of rainwater, which could be one rain, and then you fill it up after. You can use that as a regular mikveh.
Yeah, rain season here, we totally could have built an mikvah.
Yeah.
But also
We have a game plan.
Huh?
Totally.
Also, mikveh is man-made.
No, it's rainwater.
I know, but it's man-made. What's the difference?
No, it's about the water. I mean, the water that they put in is not she'uvim. It's not. It's not from a hose.
It has to be 100% from this time.
Yeah, the first 40 yeah. Another important item is chaluda. If you have rust on it, that's the same thing. If something is rusty, you have to take off the rust before because that's considered a chatzitza, right? Not paint. Paint is fine. In the olden days, paint used to chip off. That was an issue. Nowadays, the paint stays on, but rust would be a problem. There is I wanted to just end off on what we started off before about hashgacha peratit because we already passed the hour mark. And that is that a lot of times we have things in our life, we don't know why they happen. And we think that since it happened to someone else, it doesn't apply to us. There's a story of Rav Aryeh Levine. Rav Aryeh Levine was inside a taxi, and the taxi driver tells him, he asked him, "Are you Orthodox?" He says, "Yeah, I'm a rabbi." He said, "My friend is religious." He said, "That's beautiful." He's like, "I want to tell you the story." He said, and a snake came, and he wrapped himself around him, and he was squeezing him, and he thought it was over. Out of nowhere, the snake just gets off of him and leaves. And he said, "I knew that God did that to me, so I should change my life and become better." So Rav Aryeh Levine said, "So then why didn't you become religious? What a story, it's a miracle. You should have become religious also." And he says, "But the snake wasn't around me." So a lot of times, when things happen in the world and we don't know why they're happening, in New Jersey or in Israel now with the rockets that started again, all these different things, and we think, it's so far from home, it has nothing to do with me. But this is for us to understand, this is what Hashgacha Peratit is. All these different items that come to play and come to us that we have to keep in mind and we have to work on. I said this story before in one of the early classes. I'm just going to say it one more time and I will end off with this. But there was a story of a man from Williamsburg who comes to his friend in Borough Park and he tells his friend, I need to borrow $10,000. I need $10,000. I'm going to pay you back in a week. I have a sure deal, an investment. It's going to come through and it's going to come back to you. He said, "Listen, it's a lot of money for me right now, but you're my friend. I'm going to give it to you." He gives him $10,000. The week happens, no money. He says, "I'm sorry, I need another 2 weeks. Something happened, but I'm going to get it for you." 2 weeks, nothing. 3 months, a year. A year and a half later, he gets a call. He already thought it was over. They're not friends anymore. And he says, "I have half the money. I have $5,000. You give me the $5,000. I'll give you the $5,000, but you have to come right now from Borough Park to Williamsburg." He said, "Oh, that's very far. I don't know if I'll do it." He said, "You have to accept the $5,000. You got to be here in 30 minutes. He said, "Okay, it's better than nothing." He gets in a car. He's driving as fast as he can. He gets pulled over by the cop. And he says, "Listen, police officer." And the guy's like, "I know everyone has excuses. What's your excuse?" He said, "You don't understand. I lent someone money. I need the money back." He said, "I have to be here in a half hour." He said, "I don't believe you. Everyone, are you pregnant also?" "No, I'm not pregnant. It's true. I promise." He says, "I'll make you a deal. I'll tell you. If I am lying, you can take my license. You can put me in jail. Do whatever you want. But if I'm saying the truth, you got to let me go. You got to let me just do it. Just give me the ticket after." He said, "You know what? I'll do you one better." The cop says, "I'm going to go in front of you. I'm going to escort you." And he goes. He escorts him all the way to Williamsburg. He goes up the steps. He says, "I want to see if this is true." He knocks on the door. The man goes and he sees his friend, or his old friend, and a police officer. He says, I didn't say you should call the cops. I have the whole 10,000, just leave me alone. So you see, when you think how bad it is, how things are so terrible, like, you know what, I had to get pulled over. Now, God, now you have to do this to me. But everything is done for a reason. This is what Hashgacha is. B'ezrat Hashem, we keep this in mind. We keep the story of Rav Aryeh Levine, the story of this man from Borough Park, the story of Mr. Shama, who saw that there's so much more in life that we could do, that we can accomplish if we see God's hand in everything. When we take Parashat Vayeshev and we know why the 8 Pesukim don't have a Vav to tell you that 8 is supernatural, 8 is a time that's over physicality, that it means more and it's stronger. And we take the story of Chanukah showing that the war was the miracle, because a lot of times God hides himself, and we're here to see the little nuances that he throws in our path every once in a while. And we keep this in mind, and the story of the skunk, we will have a good Chanukah, and we should all be blessed. Amen. So an item like a milk frother, where it's one piece, it doesn't come off, the whole thing has to go in. By all electrical items, the whole thing has to go in. Dries up, and then it'll be fine. Having it just plugged into the wall is not enough to take it out of this issue.